I am Gregory Hallows, and this is Preserve Halloween Podcast. So, with this episode, we are going to conclude our series on Yule, exploring the last 4 nights individually, just like we did with the first 8. And I really hope that you guys enjoyed the history of Yule that I've done and its, historical significance. I didn't get, too deep into any of the nights, but it's a little bit of an overview kind of to get you more interested in this time. And I also want to apologize. I didn't mention it in the first few episodes, but any of these words that I mispronounce, I'll apologize now. Because I'm sure I said some of it wrong, but I hope I came close. So let's continue. We're going to start with the 9th night and keep going. So, by the 9th night of Yule, the darkness no longer felt hostile. It felt familiar. The fear that sharpened the early nights had dulled into something heavier and more contemplative. The sun, though still weak, had begun its slow return, and with it came the sense that survival was no longer in question. Meaning was. What mattered now was what we would be carried forward and what would be left behind. This was Eddas Night, and long before books or streaming services, people gathered around the hearth to tell tales of gods, monsters, and heroes. They passed down myth, history, and values through spoken word into what we now call folklore or mythology. In Norse traditions, these stories weren't just pretty language. They were a gift of Odin himself and the Skalds. These poets were honored people. One way to carry on this tradition is through the reading the Eddas, the sagas, or other poems during Yule. A night devoted not to ritual action, but to memory preserved through story. The Eddas spoke long before they were written, and these were not entertainment. They were repositories of cultural survival, genealogies, myths, warnings, moral reckonings. And on this night, stories were told aloud, not because they were dramatic, but because they were necessary. Families gathered close to the fire. Elders spoke most often. Younger listeners were expected to remain silent. Interrupting was discouraged. These stories were believed to lose power if treated casually. Tales of gods making terrible choices, of heroes failing, of cleverness saving some and pride destroying others. These stories were reminders that the world was shaped by consequence. The power without wisdom always carried a cost. Eddas Night was not about glory, it was about continuity. To forget the stories was to forget how to survive. And as the fire burned low, listeners were expected to internalize what they heard, not analyze, not debate, simply remember. Memory itself was sacred on this night, because it was memory that connected the living to those who had endured before them. The 10th night shifted the focus outward. This was Hospitality Day, and in the spirit of Freyr, whose bounty is meant to be shared, hospitality was also a sacred duty in Norse and Germanic culture. As Havamal reminds us, generosity toward others is an important part of living a good life. During those harsh Nordic winters, sharing food, warmth, and shelter could mean the difference between life and death. Yule was a time of community feasting and giving. Even in lean times, offerings were made, and generosity was expected to neighbors, travelers, and the less fortunate. Consider inviting someone to join your feast, especially someone who might otherwise be alone, or dropping off foods or goods for those who might need it. In the depths of winter, hospitality was not politeness, it was law. To refuse shelter or food during Yule was to invite ruin. Not just social consequence, but spiritual consequence. Strangers were dangerous. but they were also sacred. Any guest might be more than they appeared. A god in disguise, an ancestor testing the household, a spirit measuring generosity. Doors were opened more readily on this night. Extra food was prepared deliberately. Beds were shared. Fires were kept warm well into the night. No one was turned away without reason. Hospitality Day was not about abundance. It was about division of scarcity. To share what little you had was an act of defiance against winter itself. There were stories, always stories, of households that failed this test, of doors slammed shut, of travelers left to freeze. These stories never ended well. Hunger followed, livestock sickened, luck abandoned the home. To welcome another was to ensure the year would welcome you in return. We'll be right back after this quick break. I am Gregory Hallows, your voice behind the Preserve Halloween podcast and founder of the Halloween Preservation Society. Halloween is more than a holiday. It's history, folklore, and a tradition worth protecting. If you love the stories, the research, and the deep dives into Halloween I bring you, please consider supporting the Preserve Halloween podcast. Your support can help me with more research opportunities, including travel to locations relevant to Halloween history, and to bring you even more insight into the world's greatest holiday. Every one of your contributions, no matter the amount, helps keep the jack-o'-lantern glowing just a little bit longer. So support the show if you can, help me preserve the past, and keep Halloween history alive for generations to come. Check the links in the show description to find out more. And thank you. And now, back to the podcast. By the 11th night, the mood shifted again. Lighter on the surface, but charged beneath it. This was the night of the Yule Goat, Yulbakken, who has ancient roots in Nordic tradition, though its exact origins are tangled in myth and folk practice. Some scholars trace the figure back to Thor, whose chariot was pulled by two magical goats, Tangrisnir and Tanjoster. Others believe the Yule Goat stems from fertility rites, where a goat spirit symbolized abundance and the turning of the agricultural year. By the 17th century, the goat took on a rowdier role in Scandinavian Yule celebrations. In the Yulebuk tradition, groups of costume revelers, sometimes wearing goat masks or horns, would roam from house to house performing songs, telling jokes, or playfully demanding food and drink. It was sort of like caroling mixed with guising. Eventually, the Yule Goat transformed into a gift bringer in parts of Scandinavia and today, where you'll still find straw goat ornaments, Yulbakken, decorating hearths and doorways as a symbol of both protection and mischief. And the goat was not originally a toy or decoration. It was an ancient symbol of vitality, fertility, and dangerous abundance. It belonged to thunder gods and harvest rites. It represented unchecked energy, the kind that could sustain life or destroy it if not properly contained. Straw goats were crafted and placed near hearths or doors. In some regions, young men dressed as goats, going from house to house, testing hospitality, causing mischief, demanding food or drink. Laughter was permitted on this night, but never cruelty. The Yule Goat embodied chaos allowed, not chaos unleashed. It reminded people that joy without restraint was just as dangerous as fear without respect. Too much indulgence invited imbalance. Too much repression invited despair. The goat walked the line between the two. And children loved this night. Adults watched carefully, because chaos, once invited, was not always eager to leave. And then, the 12th night. Our final night, the most important night of all. This was Nornir night, Fate Day. The Nornir are essentially the fates of Norse mythology. There's Uror, what has been, Vorandi, what is becoming, and Skuld, what must be. They live at the base of the Yggdrasil, where they carve runes into the roots of the world tree and weave the threads of destiny for the gods and mortals. Now, there's no known Norse festival for the Norns at Yule, but they are closely tied to turning points. It's said that at each birth they arrive to shape that person's fate, and closing Yule celebrations with a day dedicated to fate feels fitting. The Nornir, who wove destiny itself, were believed to be closest on this night. Past, present, and future tightened together like threads drawn through the same loom. What had been done during Yule now settled into consequence. No divination was performed on this night. Fate was not questioned, it was acknowledged. People reflected quietly. Fires burned steadily. Ashes from the Yule log were collected with care. These ashes carried protection. They would be spread on fields, kept in pouches, or placed at thresholds throughout the year. On Nornir night, people accepted responsibility. The year ahead would not be random. It would be shaped by choices already made, by how the dead had been honored, how the land had been respected, how strangers had been treated, how words had been spoken when they mattered the most. As the night deepened, the liminal space began to close. The dead withdrew, the spirits returned to their places, the wild hunt faded back into story. Time began to behave properly again. When morning came after the 12th night, it did not feel celebratory. It felt earned. Now, the 12 nights of Yule were never meant to be decorative. They were a survival framework, a way to face darkness without pretending it wasn't there, a way to teach each generation that winter was not an interruption, it was a teacher. And Yule asked difficult questions. Who do you honor when fear arrives? What do you share when resources are thin? What stories do you carry forward? What chaos do you allow? And what do you refuse? It taught that light is not given freely. It must be welcomed, protected, remembered. We still feel Yule, even if we no longer name it. In the way we gather when nights are long, in the urge to tell stories, in the instinct to light candles against the dark, in the quiet reckoning that arrives at the end of every year. The old ways understood something we are all still relearning. Darkness is not the enemy. Forgetting is. The 12 nights of Yule were also never meant to be quaint. They were not festive placeholders waiting for something brighter to arrive. They were a framework for survival, a ritualized way to face uncertainty, darkness, and fear without pretending those things did not exist. What Yule taught was simple and brutal. The world does not promise safety. The year does not promise kindness. Light is not guaranteed. But memory is powerful. Community is essential, and ritual gives shape to fear. In honoring ancestors, people remembered where they came from. In honoring the land, they acknowledged what sustained them. In honoring the dead, they learned how to live. Modern life has dulled these lessons, but they have not vanished. We still mark the darkest time of the year with light. We still gather. We still tell stories. We still feel the pull inward, the need to reflect, to reckon, to prepare. Yule survives because winter still asks the same questions it always has. Who are you when the world grows quiet? What do you carry with you into the dark? And what are you willing to leave behind so the sun can return? Those are ancient questions, and they still deserve ancient answers. Until next time, stay strange, stay curious, stay spooky, and always preserve Halloween.